Hey y'all, how to start a dream group, a guide to sharing and growing through dreams. So, what is a dream group? A dream group is a group of people basically who trust one another, that can build a container where you can share intimate information and nurture one another through sharing your dreams. Now, a dream group is not therapy. A dream group can be made up of all kinds of folks, and you don't need to have an expert in the room, but it is a place for self discovery, for spiritual growth, at least my dream groups are, and using our dreams as a window into the deeper parts of ourselves. So, why start a dream group? I'm pretty passionate about this. We live in a time in which people feel so disconnected, even alienated. Social media, political divides, economic pressures have got people feeling really disconnected from one another. A dream group is a way to be connected, a connection to other people that you trust and love, but also a connection to the deeper part of yourself. And that is what we long for, is a deep connection. Another reason to start a dream group is to understand dreams better. And here's how that works. When we work with our dreams by ourselves, and we should, often our understanding of them is quite limited. In other words, it's our dream. We see sometimes what we want to see in the dream. And if we're honest, once in a while we might sugarcoat what we think a dream means. If we work a dream with another person, say a therapist, or in a dream group, then we will get other perspectives that we can't ignore. And so it's possible that it will lead to more insight and a better understanding. So, how many people do you need in a dream group, and how often should you meet? I think that if you could find and gather together 8 to 10 people who are really, really interested in this work, knowing that 1 or 2 or 3 might not make it to every meeting, that would make a pretty solid dream group. You know, you need 4 or 5 at least. And if you have 8 folks and you allow for folks missing once in a while, that's pretty good. Any more than 8 or 10 people, though, if everybody shows up, means that not everybody gets to contribute or participate. So 8, 10 people, knowing some won't come every single time. My dream group meets once a week on a Wednesday afternoon. For a number of years, I facilitated another group that met every other week on a Sunday afternoon. I think both once a week and every other week work best. I do know of a group that meets just once a month, and they've made that work for a long, long time. But I think once a month loses momentum. So it depends really on your group, but I think once a week or once every other week is my recommendation. You need at least 90 minutes. My group meets for 2 hours, but 90 minutes, you can do good dream work in 90 minutes. We meet in a church. That's where the dream group was born, and that's where it's met ever since. But dream groups can meet in community spaces. I know of a group that meets in a restaurant that's got kind of a private room, and they do their dream work over small plates and a glass of wine. My dream group meets mid-afternoon, and we don't have refreshments. I know of a dream group that meets in one another's homes. They take turns hosting dream group. And I think they serve refreshments. The structure of it that way really depends on you. I found that having refreshments can be distracting, and then you just end up having sort of a little party. Whereas meeting mid afternoon and really concentrating on the dream work seems to work better for me. But people have made other ways of doing it work. So, to create the atmosphere of trust that is necessary, it's important that everybody agree on a few things. And one is confidentiality, because dream work can really bring up deep stuff, heart stuff, soul stuff. And we want to feel like we can trust talking about those things, our spirituality, or sometimes our relationships come up in our dreams, and we want to feel a level of trust. So that confidentiality, we agree that whatever we talk about in dream group doesn't get talked about outside of dream group. The agreement to focus on the dream work and not sort of stray off into other directions of conversations, but to stick with dream work. That some dreams to a dreamer might feel so strange or so bizarre, to agree that any dream is welcome, that all dreams are welcome and can be shared and talked through. And very important, the agreement that we will not tell one another what we think someone else's dream means to them, because only the dreamer knows what that dream really means. We can make suggestions about elements of the dream and what it means, and I'm going to describe a method of doing that in just a moment, but without imposing it on a dreamer. So to refrain from, saying things like, I know what your dream means. It's all about your relationship, or it's all about your work thing. To refrain from doing that as best we can. So here is some suggestions about the structure of the meeting, how the meeting will go. So gather. Now the room we gather in looks a little bit like this. We sit around a round table, we light a candle, we try to have fresh flowers on the table, and we have a brief check-in, just 10-15 minutes if possible. Sometimes we go a little longer, of course, but a brief check-in. And then we have a moment or two of silence. And this is to set the container. We have a moment or two of silence that shifts us from what's going on outside in our world to this work. So we have a moment of silence, and then a prayer, or a reading, or a poem, or a meditation. And that makes our container. Then we decide whose dream to work with. Now, my dream group has been going for so long that we just kind of automatically say, oh, I have a dream, or who has a dream? And we kind of go with it that way. But you can set up a way of choosing whose dream to work. If 3 or 4 people have exciting dreams to talk about, you can ask them to give their dreams a title and on a slip of paper, and have someone draw a title, trusting in the synchronicity of that method. So decide on whose dream to work with, and then use the projective dream work method that I'm going to describe in just a few moments. And when that process is over, think about how to honor the work, honor the dream, honor the work that you have done together, and then close with another moment of silence and maybe another closing prayer or meditation or poem. And again, that closes the container. This is sacred work, and we give it all due respect. Projective method for group dream work does not require an expert in the room, and that's what makes it safe and very appealing. So this is how it goes. The dreamer of the day tells her dream in the present tense, as if she's having it now, in as much detail as she can. If she's brought her dream journal, she can read it, or she can just tell it in the present tense. And then the dream group can ask clarifying questions. And what I mean by clarifying questions are questions that clarify details in the dream, the who, what, where questions. But we refrain from asking meaning questions, and we refrain from asking emotion questions. And this is very important because in a few moments, each member of the dream group is going to reflect on the meaning for themselves. And so we don't ask the dreamer, what does that mean to you at this point in the process? Clarifying questions are questions like, well, what color was that? Or what time of day did it seem to be? Was it light or dark? Did you turn right or left? And refrain from asking, and how did you feel? Refrain from asking that. If the dreamer offers how they felt in the dream, then that's an element of the dream. But we don't ask because we're going to check in with how we feel about the dream. So then the dreamer tells the dream again. And what's really interesting is how frequently new details surface in the second telling of the dream. And maybe a couple of more clarifying questions about the new details. Then the dreamer sort of pulls back from the circle or even turns around, because now the dream itself and not the dreamer is the focus of the work. And now each dream group member, not the dreamer, reflects on the dream as if they have had the dream themselves. So now there are all of these versions of the dream, and the group reflects on it by saying, in my version of this dream, or if this were my dream, I would think this about elephants. If this were my dream, I'd be frightened about this. If this were my dream, the color blue means this to me. And so we make the dream our own and we reflect on it from our own point of view. And we're very careful not to point any of our reflections toward the dreamer, but toward the dream itself. And so this goes around for a little while, and we kind of can feel when the reflections are beginning to slow up. And you might have a designated sort of timekeeper or leader of the day, if you will, that will then bring the reflections to a close and invite the dreamer back in to comment on what the dreamer has heard. But here's a very important thing to remember. The dreamer can comment on the dream or any of those associations, but the dreamer is not required to. The dreamer does not have to comment. Then what I like to do is sort of ask the group how the process felt, or if anybody else had an insight. Because sometimes a dream worked this way may mean something to a dream group member that's even more energizing than it was to the dreamer. This happens frequently because the shared work if you will, as part of the shared unconscious. So to give everyone a chance to reflect on what the energy was for each member of the dream group. And then we think about how to honor the dream. And after talking about how the dreamer, or in fact the whole dream group, can honor the dream, close the dream work session with another period of silence and perhaps a prayer of thanksgiving or a meditation or a reading of some sort. And again, this closes that container, the container of the sacred work, which is dream work. Honoring the dream is so important. The dream has come to bring a message, information to the dreamer and now to the entire dream group. And it's only polite to send it a thank you note by doing something concrete, something in waking life to acknowledge the work. And so to draw an image from the dream, to paint an image from the dream, to write a story using elements of the dream, or let the dream be the beginning of a story and keep writing what happens next in the dream. Or find a miniature or toy version of something in the dream. Did you dream of a lion? Then you can find a figurine of a lion and keep it near you for a little while, just to remind you of the insights that came with the dream. Or did you dream about driving around town fast in a red sports car? To get a little toy version of that to remind you of the energy of that red sports car. So here's a few suggestions I have based on our experiences. And the first one is keep a consistent schedule. That is, just decide on your meeting time and just meet. Even if only 2 or 3 people come, that's okay. Just keep meeting, keep consistent time and day. Now, in my dream group, we take off at holiday. We take off the week of Thanksgiving through the new year. We come back together in the new year. And this is left over from when I was in the retail business. And just in the retail business at Christmas time, things get too busy. And in fact, everybody is busy at holiday time. So we very deliberately take a break during that time and then reconvene in the new year. It might be helpful to designate someone, and this can be shared, this can be rotated, but to designate someone to send an email reminder of the meeting, to designate someone to open the doors, turn on the lights, designate someone to be your timekeeper for the day. These are often helpful ways to make the meeting go more smoothly. You can get your dream group jump-started by reading a book together and maybe discussing a chapter of the book at the beginning of your dream group meeting for a little while. And the 2 books that we used to start my dream group so long ago, and please know we had no idea what we were doing, but these 2 books guided us: Inner Work by Robert Johnson and The Wisdom of Your Dreams by Jeremy Taylor. And Jeremy Taylor goes into great detail about dream group dynamics, which is so helpful. And also consider Montague Ullman's book, Working with Dreams. He was the pioneer that started the Projective Dream Group method because he wanted anybody and everybody, not necessarily experts, to lead dream groups. And he wrote this book in the 1970s, I think, and it goes into detail about how to do projective dream work. He was the pioneer for that. So I hope that you will consider starting a dream group. It's terribly important in our day and time to reconnect with the deeper wisdom within ourselves, the transcendent aspect of ourselves, and to connect with that in other people, to keep us all knit together, if you will, to understand the, there's something bigger than ourselves that holds us all, and it speaks to us in our dreams. And so this is very important work, and I really hope that you'll consider starting a dream group. If you've got questions, let me know. Send me an email, Karen Bonner at karenbonner.com, and I'll be happy to answer them.